Oh, Bunnings Warehouse, that's where we are. It automatically geotags the recording.
I don't even know that there is a Bunnings Warehouse anywhere in the radius of here.
It's like right up the street, isn't it? It's miles away. Okay, so for starters, I guess, do you agree with my premise? Do you think that journalists are so unique and newsrooms such unique environments that that they're no good as a general example, or do you think that you could take some of the lessons that you've learned and they'd be useful for some other industry?
I think that they are a unique example, but in the way that can be fed back to other areas, because it's like a pressure cooker of personalities, time frames, interpolitical dynamics and things all happening in a really concentrated so with extremes. So one of the things that I've come across from in my discussions and also in my own head is the idea that language is really important, and the way that you deal with. So I'm sort of coming up with two foundational principles. One is that you tell the truth, and the other is use the right language. And this is dealing with journo, especially through all the shit that we've had to do, change. Do you agree with that? Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So what I'm looking for really are examples where corporate culture has had a head-on smash with journo culture.
Yeah.
And because I've seen it particularly in the technical sphere with 9MSN and product people, but I've also seen it when HR people come in with models and templates and kind of wide-eyed, and then they hit these cynics who just think that they're full of shit.
Yeah.
Do you think that's accurate?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, do you want? Are you planning on quoting me on all these? Or do you want some anonymised examples?
However you want. However you want it.
There's probably a mix of things there.
You say however you want me to take this information.
So I'm sure that there actually, if I could probably reflect on get some really good examples for you on that.
Yeah, great.
And
because I can totally anonymise.
I can see it come through. I can see it come through not just on the types of corporate type messaging that comes through and this absolutely cynical point of view, but I also see it come through in the types of HR issues that come back,
right?
And how and we can maybe talk afterwards about how to. I'll just speak frankly, and we can talk about how things maybe anonymised.
Yeah, you can. I'll tell you. I'll give you a guarantee right now that I won't do anything that I think makes you look bad. And at any level of quote, you can remove it, anonymise it, whatever you like.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we have had all of our tricky, weird, strange HR issues have all come from the editorial side of the business, almost without exception.
Yeah.
And the way that journalists think about themselves as employees,
oh my God,
and the way that they can behave is totally different from any other part of the business.
Yeah.
And I think some of that must arise from the fact that they are operating in a kind of bubble of that editorial independence, and they've been sheltered from a lot of the other things over decades. I think they have never been treated like normal employees, expected to come along with normal behaviour. Yeah, and other parts of the business are intimidated by them. Yeah, and a lot of that is because not just because of the public power they can wield, but because they are so good at language. Yeah. And they can decimate people with words. Yeah. And they're like the sharks. Yeah. In the newsroom, and everyone else is like the small fish circling around in the waters.
It's true, actually. I've noticed that, and I've got a bit of sympathy for it. Other parts of the business at MediaWorks are afraid of the newsroom.
Yeah.
And I don't 100% know. I mean, of course I do know why, because they think that there's some sort of ferocious...
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think maybe the essence is they just don't want to be torn a new one.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily even know that's born out of any significant experience in that way. But maybe it's also because they're like, you know, you have sales, product, marketing, all printing or whatever, all kind of happily weaving in between each other. In one way or another, quite similar people doing sort of jobs that fit, but not the newsroom. You know, they operate as a separate kingdom. Yeah. And, you know, certainly in a lot of the places, everywhere I've worked, people don't feel like they've got a passport to enter. Yeah. They're not welcome in there.
Is that true?
I think it has definitely been true, because even when we've moved into this building, as you see, it's very open plan, the editorial team didn't, and we started off by, or we still do to a degree, have, it's a activity-based working where you have noisy zones, quiet zones, all the rest of it, and we had a sort of central news desk, but apart from that, everybody sort of sits depending on what type of environment you want to be in, and the journalists didn't want anybody else to sit near them because they didn't want them to overhear any sensitive conversations.
do you think that's real, or is that just self-important?
I think it's self-important, because I've heard a lot of the conversations that go on in newsrooms, and the really sensitive ones don't happen sitting out at your desk.
You're right.
Yeah.
So why do journos think that they're so special?
I think that there are some genuine reasons why they're probably well-founded reasons, because the work that they do is not related to a real hard cold sales out. You know, from their point of view, they're on a mission. Yeah. And they're in a mission to sort of achieve something for the good of the public or the country, rather than to dirty themselves with the success or otherwise of the business. Yeah. And we want them to not be worried about, you know, they have to be able to be free to do the work they need to do. Yeah. So I think that's a lot of that. And I think, and as I am a former journalist, so I'm not like dissing another species. I was one of these people. I still think about myself as coming through that.
Are you still a journo in your head?
I think I am. I think you're always still a journo in your head. I think I always, no matter where I go, I'm like, oh, that's a good story. I'll file that away to tell the newsroom. And you know.
What do you fill in on the passenger entry card for occupation?
Well, I myself now. I put.
Do you put CEO?
I put something really. No, I put something really benign. What have I've always put in, even when I was a journalist. Yeah. I always put in something kind of quite benign. Like
so you wouldn't get picked up. Yeah.
So I kind of either might put something like communications or management or something. Yeah. A couple of times when I did put CEO, I always got asked of what. Yeah. And I thought I'll just leave it as a generic.
Better not to.
Yeah. That's I think a lot of journalists do that, so that doesn't. Back to those days when you used to get arrested if you went in the South Pacific on a holiday.
It's definitely a problem in some countries.
But regardless of that, I don't feel like I've got my clear passport into the newsroom myself now. Really? I feel...
Your management?
I'm... Yeah.
Well, you are
I don't feel I can go and plonk myself down and sit in there and converse in the same way. I feel like I'm an alien away from that now. From you know.
Yeah. Do they treat you like that?
Not on a kind of day-to-day sort of thing, but I really check, like, 'cause I never try and have any kind of input into stories and things like that, but I might be talking about something that's more about the way the homepage is structured or what types of... Sure. And I feel like they're thinking, this isn't your business. Really? You know, like you can definitely get that vibe. So.
Yeah. Can you remember the first time that you were viewed as management?
Yes, I think the first time I was really viewed as management was
Yeah.
when I became the editorial director.
Yeah.
Like before that, when I was the stuff editor or digital editor, stuff
Yeah.
editor, I was management, but in a news way.
Yeah.
And even as editorial director, even though I was still over that,
Yeah.
you were part of the executive rather than part of the journalistic team.
How did
That's
it
what I
manifest?
felt.
How did it manifest?
It's just, I think it manifests in that there is a difference in the types of things people start to talk to you about. And you know that there's a holding back of things that are not so much because you're the boss, but because you're not on the same side. What feeling about that?
Yeah. So I'm interested in sort of delving into the journalistic character. There's definitely different flavours depending on whether you're, because I was talking to Gavin, and so he comes from broadcast. So he was a producer. He was first on-air reporter, then he was a producer, then he became a manager. And he talked about what he called this interesting combination of brittleness and ego.
Yeah.
And although I do see that in print guys as well, it's more, I see that very much being a broadcast thing.
Yeah.
Not quite knowing what other people think of you and therefore always being slightly underconfident.
Yeah.
While at the same time having a mega ego.
Yeah.
How would you characterise if you, I mean, lots of different people, but what are some common traits?
I think if I think about people who've come through a print side of journalism, is that often they have been drawn into journalism because they like writing, but they're actual introverts who don't really like people. That's they are attracted to. They might have been good at English, good at writing.
Yeah.
And we, even young reporters coming into our business now, often for something we kind of all of a sudden cottoned onto a while back, that we're attracting all these introverts who don't want to go out in front. They want to email.
Oh my God.
That sort of stuff. It's
Is that a recent phenomenon?
Yeah.
Because,
And one of our big challenges now is to get journalists out from behind their computer.
Yeah.
And it's it's nothing to do with they're too busy to get out.
Oh God, it isn't.
It is a whole way of working.
Yeah.
And I see now that type of journalist has actually embraced, even though they never acknowledge this, the rise of the communications manager.
Yeah.
Because it actually, someone like me who comes from a generation where you could walk into the police station and rifle through the books and you had to go out and front it, now sees that people think their contacts are communication managers.
Yeah.
But I think for a lot of them that they are, that makes them comfortable because it's someone they can email who just comes back to them rather than them having to go and do any of the messy, uncomfortable journalistic work of building up contacts, fronting up to people, going at, and I, as someone now who gets interviewed by journalists instead of, I really can notice I'll be sitting in my own newsroom in Wellington and there's a story about stuff as a company or some media thing, and the journalist who I can literally see sitting 15 feet away from me emails me a set of questions and asks if I would mind answering some of those, and I always just go back and say, come and talk to me and don't give me a chance to manage, it's
I had far out. I totally to be fair and honest, my trajectory, I started young in the newsroom as a cadet, and I was one of those introverts, but I had to be forced.
So was I.
I was forced by the chief of staff, who I was more scared of than the phone call, to break through that and just forced to do it and get a reflex action. And that just doesn't happen anymore.
That doesn't, and I was exactly the same. I was like the kind of one at school. I loved English, I loved writing.
Yeah.
You go to journalism school, they knock all the creative writing kind of stuff out of you. But it's and I've adapted to that, but it wasn't my natural state at all.
Yeah.
And you're right. Now that it's the same, the chief reporters and things used to force you out, because actually you couldn't get the story really otherwise, because there was no Google, there was
actually no
data. You had to go there and you had to get the story and maybe use a public phone to ring it back. But
I had a recent example where I did a day on the digital desk. So they were, I don't know, they were short, and I needed to learn how they worked or whatever. I mean, it was quite a while ago now, maybe a year or more ago. But I wanted to teach them a lesson, right?
Yeah.
So we got this press release about some arrest.
Yeah.
I think it was in Christchurch somewhere. Not in Christchurch, it was in Wellington somewhere. And Tauranga. And the girl I was working with was like, oh, you just have to write this up. You know, she was having a hard time because the boss was there. She didn't know how to deal with it. Anyway, she said, you need to write this up. And I just asked her, so how would you normally write this up? And it was boring as batshit release from the police. And she said, I just write up what you got there. And I'm like, no. You know. Yeah. You can't write this up. One, it's super boring. Two, we don't actually know what happened. We can't tell what happened. We have to, we've got an address. Yeah. Let's just ring up people at that address. So I started ringing people randomly around that, and I got the best story. And it was like, they'd come here. You know, just got the grabs, got the quotes, and used a Google Street View picture of the demolition yard, and it was a drug bust and all this. Unfortunately... It totally blew up in my face because I went one step further, and I'm like, they raided this other place at the same time, so it's all them together. It's all connected and all of this sort of shit. I made it was the Google Street View picture. I just misidentified the business, the house that was raided, and the people next to. Well, I didn't, but they were in shot, sort of thing, and. I hope she still got the message, which is you've gone from a nothing to an actual story just by speaking to people. Yeah. But I'm not sure I got it across. But anyway, it's...
We had, it's not quite the same as that, but we hired, back to that kind of idea of you have to be forced, we hired an intern. We haven't done it for a while yet, an internal training. Boot camp them to train as the journalist tools. Right. Because we weren't getting good enough people at the journalism schools. Yeah. And set them off on, and we hired this guy who'd been out working in some other job. Yeah. And after we hired him and started to do the training, he kind of started to really struggle with this idea of talking to people. Right. He fessed up to the fact that for the year before, he'd been a selective mute and had chosen not to speak.
I've never heard of that in my life. A selective mute. Oh.
So that is an extreme example, but he is now turned out to be one of our best students, and actually an incredibly vocal sort of person in terms of he's found his area.
I'm kind of not surprised, because someone who could be so crazy as to be a selective mute has probably got something.
Definitely. Yeah. And he's great. He's really great. Yeah. I'll tell you who it is. Just so it's Charlie Mitchell, who's our really? Yeah. That makes me laugh now, because he's almost gone to the other extreme where he's become extremely opinion. Yeah. Actually, that's one other thing I've really noticed. We've really kind of noticed is this. I think it's a bit back to the journalists viewing themselves as special. Yeah. Is that instead of becoming the journalist, the interviewer, who digs out fun the stories, assembles the opinions, and that there is a rise of opinion of journalists writing opinion about the subject they are reporters on. Yeah. Which is, I find that really dangerous. Something to try and this is one of the things that really frustrates me, but in my non-editorial role now, and
I hate it.
I absolutely hate, and it's just there's an element in there of ego, and there's an element of laziness in terms of the actual journalistic work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
And it's not their role to be the authority on something.
No. Also, I've got a base level problem is that opinion is really boring. Like,
yes.
It's like I don't really care what you think.
Unless you are the world authority on a subject.
Or
I don't care about your opinion. You're the minister.
If you're the minister, that can be really important because, but you know what? I don't give a fuck unless you're telling me new information. So when I came to MediaWorks, it was in disarray, right?
Yeah.
Because Weldon had just been through there with he had this model of what he wanted to do. And he ignored the culture of the newsroom, the personality of the news people, and he got fucked over by them. But, you know, in the end, he came off second best. But it was like walking into the China shop after the ball has been through when I started. To me, that was a classic corporate methodology or management thinking the Harvard Business School meets and collides with newsroom culture.
That's probably the most obvious one.
Have you had any? Because you know the reason. I reckon one of the reasons why, apart from your natural intelligence and skill, that you would have been appointed CEO is because they recognise that this is a media company who's the best person to lead these people, especially through troubled times and all of this fucking downsizing.
And my CEO at the time, Greg Highwood, was a former journalist.
He was too, and I would like to interview him as well.
Yeah. He's because I think that is a classic example of theory and business practice completely ignoring how to deal with a certain culture and way of working that is unique in that way. But every business and organisation has different cultures and ways of working. It's just newsrooms are probably at an extreme because the difference too with a newsroom and journalists is that they have the real power to go make a public noise about it and to they don't have to go on strike, and they don't go on strike to bring you to your knees if they chose, because they've got the independence to go out and just do their work, but shine that light on your own business. Or that's when, things like that is when the network of journalists really come to play as well, because, you know, newsrooms, the MediaWorks journalists were feeding all their stories and tidbits about Mark Weldon around the... I know that Mark Weldon used to ring Simon Tong, our boss at the time. There were a couple of times basically in tears about, this is at the very end, and just shattered by this unexpected to him reaction back and what it had done to him as a public figure as well. And Simon used to tell with him, you know, used to talk to him about, you can't pick fights like that with your with your newsroom, and not expect it to come back. So I'm just, I might have to give a little bit of thought to some particular examples, because there definitely will be some. I just, you know, thinking off the top of my head. In some ways, I think that because I've come from that newsroom, when it's come to anything that's been, you know, I've had to do a lot of cost cutting and transformation, that it's helped me frame what the language is that we need to do. You know, it's not that things don't go public or turn into big storms. But I know that the newsroom doesn't like to hear anything that could sniff of corporate jargon.
Yeah.
And
have you ever made a mistake and used corporate jargon on them?
I'm sure I have, and probably particularly early on. Maybe, in cases where I've kind of forgotten that it's jargon.
Yeah.
You forget.
I know. I've done the same.
But what being in this role now is having both been a journalist and come through managing those journalists has really influenced the way I am as a leader now and the way I communicate to staff.
Yeah.
On the probably the most obvious way is because I just took the decision to be completely transparent about everything. And partly that was because I learned as a journalist that as soon as there is a whiff of anything trying to be held back or secret, it sets the attack lens on what's going on. There's a story there.
Yeah.
Whereas the more open you are about something, the less people think there's something to see.
Yeah.
Then it genuinely does start to build up into a kind of culture where people feel they can ask any question or get any piece of information.
Yeah.
But the even if I think back to those, it would be good to talk to Greg because I know he will have dealt with this. The Fairfax Australia kind of days where, they're so much more industrialised over there too. But
he had it.
They would
bad too.
Yeah. But they would always try and keep things tight, and it would be linked to other media by someone rather than if you speak openly from the beginning and kind of explain. It's often treated as there's nothing to see here or there's no news in this. It's just a So I think that's really so. Even one example. Hugh Marks was here this week.
Yep.
And he came to Tuesday and he came to tell staff that we weren't going to be sold.
Yeah.
So his head of comms emailed me on Thursday. Like there's this in that world, there was this massive kind of stuff going on about when he was coming, what he would say and all the rest of it, to make sure I kept it completely confidential because they didn't want word getting out that Hugh was there. And I said, I've already gone out and told all the staff Hugh's here. He goes, I don't want the story to leak out. I said, the story will leak out if people find out he's coming and that you're keeping it. So, and I was talking to a media reporter in the corridor in Wellington, and I did roll my eyes about the fact that, hey, come on, don't you even wonder why he's coming?
Yeah.
He was like, he's here next week. I wonder if I'll get to ask him about the sale process and, like a...
Yeah, and that's exactly
it's like
right. You've
hiding
totally...
in plain sight. You kind of take the the sort of
the frisson. Yeah. Of course, there are times when you can't be open with things.
That's right.
For example, you've decided to shut something down, but at the time, because there are processes and people who are affected, you can't be as transparent as you'd like to be. What's your approach then?
My approach is still to be as open as I can be by making sure the landscape is well signalled, so that kind of, if I think about the closure of print titles last year, which were all tiny and which we hadn't planned to announce all that right then or as one go, but for some reason Greg Highwood wanted to announce it all in one go then so he could say fuck you Commerce Commission. That was what probably wasn't our preferred way, but but what I the way I laid the land is I do things like every month I do a all hands town hall video conference and different comms, and I just start talking about the fact that what's most important to us is keeping our footprint in the community, the journalism, the presence, not the actual products that we, to try and kind of being quite frank about what state print is in and things like that. So it's not like a shock. Yeah. Because I when I came into this role, and probably a bit before when I was on the editorial role, really started to realise how little a lot of people knew about the state of the business they worked in. Like they were genuinely shocked to hear things weren't going well or what have you.
It's true, actually, isn't it? You can't assume, one, that they know what you know, even if the information is available to them, that they've
That's right.
even read it or,
yeah.
or thought
or
about
that they've kind of got a context broader than their own job. The other thing I sort of really realised quite early on, and I'm kind of struggling with it, actually, now that we're not being sold, something I really want to tackle is that we've been disrupted for so long that there's there's change fatigue, all that kind of thing. You actually never stop. You're never through that, and we never will be through that.
Yeah.
And for the journalist, that has a real particular, that has a bigger impact there than any other part of the business, because they feel they can't do anything else. That it's not like a salesperson thinks, I'll go work for Vodafone fridge company. Yeah. It's like the journalists think that that's all they can do. And their reactions to that, I think this actually plays into some of our HR issues, is that their reactions to things become much more extreme, personal reactions to things. Some of the tales that I could tell you about the way they behaved. And often I think it's come back to almost like an extreme reaction to the stress they feel about their own future as a journalist. Sometimes it comes back to their...
So you're paying the price for the state of the industry, which is also stressing you out, probably. But it's sort of... I can understand that. I felt like that myself when I was in those shoes. But there's also this kind of sense that decline is inevitable, and it starts to become a self-fulfilling limitation on how well people do their jobs or how far they push them. So if the expectation is that audiences or print newspapers are just going like that, then the best people do is only get to the expected decline, never to sort of have a view that and it's you start to find that one of the things I'm really struggling with is, how do I get back in a culture of high performance or expected success rather than expected failure? So what's the answer? I'd like to know.
I don't know, but I'll let you know when I figure it out.
I think so. TV is just experiencing now what you guys have been dealing with for at least 5 years, and
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I can't do that.
Just a negative. And and it's all just tied to revenue, right?
Yeah.
It's just all tied to revenue.
Yeah.
And the only thing in the favour of MediaWorks is that we've been a marginal business for so long for other reasons that there's a little more resilience there around.
Around adversity.
Around adversity.
Yeah.
There's a flip side to that, which is this fucking underdog culture, which I hate. Which I know is a source of pride, but actually I've now realised it's a source of weakness.
Yeah. Yeah, because you see yourself as a bit of a victim as well.
You see yourself as a victim. Yeah. That's the problem.
Yeah, no, I think, what was I just going to say there? In terms of that sort of corporate culture, meaning I think where it really is tested is around that cynicism of your motivations for anything.
Yeah.
So that even things that are genuinely positive or for the health of staff or for whatever are viewed with suspicion, cynicism. And I quite often hear, through the grapevine, the assumptions that people make about why you're doing something or what it means are so far off base.
So way off.
But the journalists are they're at the heart of that. It's not any of the other parts of the business, but it starts to become the currency. And even, for example, we've run this, which we've done for years, these sort of foundational management programs.
Yeah.
And in these particular latest one, Auckland and Wellington one, there just happens to be a high number of editorial people on it. It could be high numbers, so it could be anybody. It's across the business.
Yeah.
And the theory that has come out of that is that instead of us investing in people's development, is that it's a grading exercise to decide who we're going to get rid of. It's
Yeah, yeah. I totally believe it, and I personally find that affronting when I hear things like that. Because it's like, what, you think that I would actually condone
be
such a
so
thing?
underhand and so, you know, I could tell you what, we could grade your performance without spending thousands of dollars on bringing you to a course.
Right. Unnecessarily elaborate.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Um,
And it's I know I've come across perfectly fully formed theories about why we're doing things or what we're doing, which are completely offbeat.
Yeah.
But they're like perfectly formed.
Yeah.
You know.
When Hugh was here and I was
Yeah.
talking to that journalist, he was like, I think he's going to tell us that TVNZ are a really interested bidder, and I know that because Kevin Kendrick hasn't said that they're not, and I'm sure he would. I'm like, it's so not going on. You know, like it's so... And I used to... actually, being in this role, what's given me is a really good insight into how wrong journalists can be.
Yeah.
But journalists do not see themselves as people who are wrong.
No.
They see themselves as people whose take on something and the assembling of information is right.
Yeah.
God,
yeah. Hey, do you ever do floor briefings? Do you get people together and speak to them en masse?
I do that a lot. So I did one yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And I do, because we're all over the country, I do the, so the one I'll do another one next week. Our regular one next week. We did a special one with Hugh this week.
Wow, how many do you do? That's a lot.
So, normally I do the video ones maybe once a month-ish.
Right.
But I kind of make sure we do them when there's actually some good stuff to say, not just filling in the time.
Yeah,
so people stop work and dial into the web.
It's like a Google Hangout or something.
It's like, so what I would do is here, I'd stand in the, outside that big screen.
Yeah.
And everyone here can kind of get around. But there's also a camera that's linked everyone else in through a web Zoom technology stuff.
Yeah.
And I take questions from the floor, but also live through the day. And then as I go round different businesses, I do stand-up floor briefings for the whole business. Usually start that off by giving a bit of a summary of business update type of thing, or strategy update. But it's really there so that people can ask all these questions and,
that's cool.
Start to do.
So you would have journos mixed in with other people, or is it are there areas where there are only journos? Because how do you find addressing journos?
So the journos, I'll take, I'll go to Christchurch, for example, got people like Martin Van Benen and Blair Ensor and stuff there.
Yeah.
And but I do a whole company briefing, and then one of the journos, first thing they'll say is, "Can you guarantee there will be no more job cuts?" It's always the first question from a journalist.
Yeah.
And I always say the same thing, which is, I can never guarantee there will be no more job cuts. No boss in any industry anywhere can guarantee that.
Yeah.
Can I tell you what's coming up that we don't? I can say we don't have any major cost programs coming up. We don't have but we're up for constant change. But it's these kind of, and the other thing about journalists that I've really, what actually does my head in, is they don't give a shit about anybody else in the business.
Yeah.
So you could exit 50 salespeople, and that will never merit a line in any publication.
Right.
But you could disestablish 2 or 4 reporters, and it's this big story.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not they view themselves in this bubble of they, and even when I was collecting questions for the for this latest town hall, all the questions about jobs were, will there be any journalist jobs lost? Will there, no, they don't view themselves as part of the organisation.
No.
They don't care about anybody else's.
Yeah.
It's
I found that. So when I went to work at the West Australian, I never questioned it, but I never met a salesperson, didn't even know where they were housed, and they were never talked about once. And it's strange for an organisation that derives its entire sustenance from advertising. Well, we had, it's like, is there any other organisation where there's such a group of self-obsessed people?
I don't think there is.
No.
It's like a bit like a celebrity culture.
Yeah.
But even though it's not...
Yeah.
it's like the rest of the organisation is all just like small satellites orbiting around them.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so given that we've got this group of self-important, self-obsessed, suspicious people who love language and who may have started out as introverts, but how do you? What's your say? You're coming in here to have a meeting with my little group of people, and you're going to tell us like we're changing your pay frequency from once every 2 weeks to once a month.
Yeah.
What's your approach?
So my approach is to I deploy language and storytelling in advance of them being able to, and actually I employ that across the business, not just as a defensive weapon. It's what I think is one of my strengths is being able to command language to, and the nuances of it and I spend probably a lot more time than any of the other CEOs before me would have done on finessing the communications messages because I know how things can be interpreted or read in that sort of tone. So when I come into something like that...
It's that time.
That's it already.
You've got a few more minutes.
Yeah.
The cab's downstairs now. You might want to get your bits and pieces.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
I'm happy to get back together again.
Okay. Good. Great. Because I'm really into this point. Do you write your own emails?
Yes.
Yeah.
I write my own emails.
Crucial.
I write everything for myself.
Yeah.
My speeches, my those things.
Yeah.
And in the occasions where the comms team are kind of putting out something like a corporate release, and that I usually rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like yesterday, we had one that was going out about Neighbourly, hitting 750,000 members or something.
Yeah.
And the corporate comms team started to write about Neighbourly, and the second paragraph was Neighbourly 750,000 address verified members, blah blah blah. And I'm like, let's take out address verified. That immediately opens up this. Why are they? What are you doing with that data? Why? It's those sorts of things. And I want to be in control of my tone of voice and the tone that we put out there at Project as a company. Yeah.
So language. So I've seen other CEOs make what I regard to be like elementary errors because they don't write their own emails and they don't write their own speeches. And it's very great that you are in the role of CEO and you do take this approach, because I think that it's not only a good approach for journalists. I think all CEOs should.
Yes.
Isn't their main job communication?
I was just about to say that. That is my main job.
Yeah.
So Simon used to have this saying when he was the CEO, which not unique to him, but it's always been the thing that stuck with me, that he knew he was doing a good job when he had nothing to do during the day because everything's working as it should be. And that's actually what a CEO's time should be like. Yeah. So that your time is about communicating and talking about what the business is, whether it's internally or externally, what the business is about, what the what we're doing and why, and and that's I pay a lot of attention to that because it's my main. I don't come from a finance background or a sales background or that, so that's my background. That's my my strength. So
do journos make good CEOs?
I think so. An interesting conversation with someone a while back that I think is true, in that it's challenging for journalists to get into the journalists can be held back from getting into those more senior positions by dint of the path they come through, where their world is, even though it's broad external, it's narrow internally, and their day-to-day focus is very short-term. It's like, I will do this story, I will fill this edition, I will get this paper away. by nature of being in a newsroom doesn't expose you to long-term planning.
Yeah.
You never have to think about how I'm going to fund this new kind of approach or if I want to do a new initiative, it's this much cost and it will result in this much revenue. Or, you never have to... And coming through different parts of the business in one way or another, you're usually exposed to those in different ways, and journalists are not.
Yeah.
So I think probably benefited from just sort of some early on accidental falling into roles where that was... Like when I became the first stuff editor... There was no head of stuff. There's no head of digital or product or anything like that.
You had to do all of that.
You did it, and and I had to learn you sort of learn by trial and error, and you start to build all those tools. But mostly, it's difficult for that to come through that editorial path when you're kind of you're deliberately non-commercial in your way you think about things. Yeah. But I do think they make good leaders when they get to that point, because if they can deploy the skills that we're strengths as journalists, like listening, communicating, taking complex information and distilling it down simply, which is a lot of what I do in broader things is just ask questions about the information and then try and distill it down to the most simple facts and outcomes. But the other thing I think is, journalists can be self-limiting in terms of going for those kind of roles. Yeah. Because they've been in what's largely regarded in the industry as quite a pure environment, and through different points in their career, not many of them seek out extra different kind of commercial responsibilities or relationships or even understanding of the drivers of the business.
God, it's fascinating. So CEOs I know who've been journos, you and Greg Highwood. I don't know anyone else. Is there anyone else?
So Paul Thompson.
Oh, Paul Thompson, yeah.
Yeah, but he's in a non-commercial... it's not it's non-commercial from a ad point of view, but he's got a whole lot of other stuff to deal with, that government, navigating politics in a different way.
You're right.
Probably not independent in a lot of ways, even though sometimes I look at him and think, I just wish I had your job.
No, he doesn't have the commercial arm.
He doesn't have the... what concerns me a lot is thinking, got the livelihoods of 900, 1,000 people to take care of, and things are getting better. No. You're not turning whereas I don't think he has that worry.
He doesn't have that problem. He's got other problems.
Yeah. One person who it might be interesting for you to talk to is the guy who's done all the training for Fairfax and us, Paul Mills. Yeah. He's Australian. Yeah. He will have a wealth of information about editorial.
So is he the management training guy?
Yeah, but he used to work for the Melbourne Business School, Mount Eliza, doing all these kind of training for them, and different types of training and management stuff. But it all comes with so if you're doing one of these courses, and he's done it for years through Facebook, through all the editorial and other parts of the business. So it involves all that stuff like 360s, personality assessments, what types of personality strengths versus styles are kind of obvious and different thing. I reckon he could really provide a lot of base information. Like, for example, a lot of the journalists who've come through that training, and a lot of it, I can't even remember a whole lot of the shit that they go through, but it's things like I'm fascinated by, they can often be off the chart in terms of their preference for conflict.
Right.
Because they
want conflict.
Yes, as in the way they operate, and I think that's that editorial challenge. As a reporter, you're always on the other side of what you're talking about, adversarial.
Yeah, because I also see a lot of avoidance. So that's the
it's kind of like this kind of extreme things that are related to not so hot on things like collaboration, and they quite often loan So I think I could give you an introduction.
That'd be awesome.
But he would...
that'd be awesome.
I actually just reckon he would be the source of so much...
base level information.
Base level information about editorial, corporate management versus editorial stuff. He would be great for all that stuff. Awesome. And actually would also have a lot of case studies. Yeah. Because everybody tells them everything when they go through those.
I'd love to be put in contact. I've got Greg Highwood's number, so I'll probably just send him a text. Are you friendly with Greg?
Oh, I'll put it this way. No, I'm not unfriendly with him, but haven't had any conversations since.
Yeah, I've just got to convince him to actually talk to me. That's all.
Oh, I think he would because he's not doing anything.
Yeah, okay.
So he wanted the overall 9 gig and felt quite bitter at the end about
Hugh
leaving.
Marks's job.
Yeah, I think he thought when there was going to be consolidation in the industry that he wasn't ready to bow out and retire. No. And then from what I gather, he wanted the ABC chair job.
Oh, and that didn't get that either.
No. So...
Of course he didn't get that. But he would have been actually a really good CEO for 9. Yeah. Because, not that Hugh's bad, I think Hugh's quite good, but just because the 9 culture needed a shake-up. Yeah, yeah. And it's...
He's definitely done, for a lot of the things that Fairfax went through in Australia over the years. I mean, the stuff he did actually did save the company from going under.
Totally.
And it's sort of... That was the other thing about that kind of editorial context is they can look at somebody else's business and kind of weigh things, but they can never apply it back to themselves and their own industry.
And surprisingly uncurious about their own industry. Yeah. Where the sources of revenue are, what are the structural challenges.
So
they're not actually
they couldn't listen to anything like that in a, you're obviously personally involved, but in a reasoned way. No. It's you're ripping the guts out those sort of language.
It's all exaggeration as well.
Yeah, which has a real influence around public perception.
Yeah.
So he, I'm sure he would be happy to talk.
Okay. Great.
Just trying to think if there was. Yeah, he would be. It would have been really interesting because I like you. I think he's good, but it's so different and even. Like Fairfax, for example, had a massive focus on health and safety, and there's not even like a committee or anything. No. I don't even know who. If we had a serious incident, I don't even know who that would go to.
No, it's the old broadcast. There's shades of the old broadcast setup.
I think I will reflect on what kind of some... Great. There will be definitely issues if I just sit and think about where are those points.